Okay, now this next table, we're going to the other table now, the many side, or maybe you're busy with the one side, but never mind, as long as you know which is the one side and which is the many side. We're going to get a DB grid there for add recipient. Now this is the other table, so I'm going to click, put the database grid there, go to the data source property, and choose the other table, DSR TBL recipient in my case. Then I'll do the same with TBS edit recipient. You know how to click on the left hand side here onto your tab sheets. You have to make sure that you clicked on the tab sheets. Look there, can you see? We click on the tab sheets here in the structure list. Only when you click on the tab sheets can you be 100% sure that you are selecting the right tab sheet. Otherwise it's going to go all over the place. So now we're going to go to the database grid for this edit recipient, draw a grid, and then go to the data source property and choose that data source for that particular table. Then the delete recipient, get a database grid on there, and choose the data source property for that particular table. Now, what do we do with Tbs Reports? That's the question. Tbs Reports is a bit of a tricky one. You go to your tab sheet for Tbs Reports. Make sure you are clicked on the left-hand side here, that you are clicked on the correct tab sheet. Okay, so you know that you are got the Tbs Reports selected. Now over here we're going to put a DB grid on. Yes. But this database grid, we're going to connect to the query component. So we go to the data source property over here, and we choose DSR query, QRY. That's why I named it, DSR QRY. DSR QRY. And now that is connected to a query. You do not make any active true or false or anything here. This is going to automatically run. We're going to see later with the code that we add. The other thing I want to put on this tab sheet TBS Reports is a rich edit. In Win32, you have to make reports, and they have to be nicely formatted. You've got to include formatting in reports. Like, you know, you're producing like a Word document that you can print later or something. So you have a rich edit, and then you got to make sure you give it a name. You can use RED Art, it's a standard name, RED Art, RED Displays. You don't worry about that name. And then, but you must have a name. In the lines property, make sure you backspace the actual rich edit name from the actual lines. And then scroll bars, make sure they are both scroll bars. Scroll bars, both. So the lines property, we make sure that those are backspaced out, and scroll bars both. You have to make sure everything is neat. And your job is going to be to make sure that all the buttons and everything that we add, that you give names on, that you're going to put captions on those buttons and so on. And you're going to put labels in so that the people know exactly what's happening. Right, so now this is my reports tab sheet. I'm going to have a whole lot of options over here that we're going to do, and it should be quite interesting what we can do with reports. We can have a Word document. I mean, this Richard is going to act like a Word document where you're going to write out things and so on. Now we are going to go to our tab sheet home. You go to PGC, find the TBS home tab sheet. And the only way to really find it is to go on the left hand side in your structure list. Well, that's basically my problem. Of course, I have to do that. By the way, if your window all of a sudden doesn't look the same, you can go to this and click on default layout again, and then it'll go back to normal. Right, I'm going here trying to find my tab sheet for going home. TBS Home, the Home tab. Now we want that to be the tab sheet that starts when we run our program. We definitely want that, don't we? And the way to make sure that happens is to click on the form and go to On Activate Event. So we're going to click on our form, go to Events, and then we're going to go to On Activate. We're going to double click inside there, and we'll say pgc.activePage equals, what do I think we did this already? Oh, we did it with the button click event. We did it for the button click event on that home button, the button to go home. But what about when we first run the program? It's important to have everything set up so that you don't see some random page opening when you run the program. So we say pgc.activePage colon equals tbs home. So whatever your page, your tab sheet is called. Okay, now here's the magic that's going to happen. In this add a message, we've got this database grid that comes up. Okay. Now you'll see that when this database grid is displayed, it's messy. You have, very long columns given and then short columns and so on for the different fields. We call them fields of the table. What if we wanted to be all set neatly one after the other? So this is what we're going to do. We go to TBS Home and we'll do the first button, btn go to add message. Let's do the btn go to add message. Let's go to your home page and then go to that first button that's going to go to the add message tab sheet. When that button goes to add message tab sheet, we're going to use our set grid column method. Remember I told you to open this notepad? This one? So you must open it now, because we're going to do a really fancy copying of this file. This is how we're going to do it, and this will help you next year as well. First of all, you highlight all of these words as I'm doing so now. And it goes on further, so we don't want that. We want this. We only want to go as far as this word over here. Just leave that one out for now. We don't want to print from a rich edit. No, we're just copying and pasting from those 2 forward slashes to set the width of a database grid neatly. We just highlight all of this. We don't alter anything on it. This is going to be our special code. Then you hold the control key and press the letter C. And then you go to your program and click F12 to get to code. Scroll right to the top and get underneath this SR star.dfm. Now guess what? Control V to paste. And you don't worry about anything. Don't worry about the red lines. Don't worry about a single thing. Now we are going to do the following. Excuse me. We're going to go to the button, go to add message. In the BTN, go to add message. As you can see, we have this active page here, but we're going to connect to the table and set the grid column widths at the same time. Whenever we navigate to that tab sheet, we want to refresh the view of the table and set the grids at the same time, and we do it using our ADO table component in message this data module. Can you see the ADO table components that you have there? You would have named them differently. So you're going to find the ADO table component that's named after your table that you're busy with. We also need to know what our data module is called in code. There's two ways to find out. You can either go F12 in your data module and go down here and you'll see it's data module 2, which is very messy. I don't want to type that each time. Or you can, and then you can change it over here in the name property. See, it says data module 2. Let's delete that. So you clicked on your data module. Okay, we have to put a name here. It's telling us. Okay, fine. I want to put a name. So I'm going to type something. DM message or DM do, whatever you want it. I'm calling it DM do, you know. You can call it anything you want. So I've called it DM do. Then in my main program, I'm going to say with DM do begin and end. Because remember, we cannot use these ADO table components or the query components without quoting our data module virtual name, and I call it DM do. Now I can type TBL message dot active equals false. So I'm typing code now, and it's in this button that goes to this tab sheet to add. So table name equals, now I'm going to give this is how you connect to a table in code. And the reason why I'm connecting to it, even though it is already connected, is because I'm refreshing the display in the database grid. Remember that the database grid is linked to this particular TBL component. And in single quotes, we can then put our ADO table name. So inside here, in the table name property, I'm going to type in the actual table name of the table. And I can find that in my relationship diagram, and I can see the spelling for it and everything. In my relationship diagram, I know that that is the name of my table in the one side. So I'm just going to type the name there. There we go. And then after that, here's where the real magic happens. This is where we use our procedure set grid column widths. And in brackets, we put in the database grid that we are dealing with. Oh, sorry about that. I don't know why this comes up all the time. So irritating. In this one, I'm going to put the database grid name, and I know it's DB Gr11 because I remember putting it there only a minute ago. Okay, next that we are going to do, and this is really exciting because, can you see, go to edit message, go to delete message. Can you see when we go to those tab sheets, we're connecting to the same table? So in the go to add message button, we can copy and paste all of this code from there to there. Control C. we can go and add it to those other two buttons who are going to the same table, basically. Control C, click F12. This one, go to edit message after we go to that. Control V to paste. Change the database grid to 2 because they increment in number as we add them. And then the next button, double click underneath the page control, Control V, and then change the database grid to 3. Right, so I'm guessing you know what's going to happen with the other tables, the other buttons, BTN go to this and BTN go to that. This BTN go to add recipient. We are going to, obviously, I'm going to do Control V and paste there, because all I need to do is change the database grid name to 4, change the ADO table component itself to TBL recipient, and change the table name here to recipient. And now I've got the structure for the other tables, the other table connection, which I can copy and paste to the other buttons. This is the first one in the set for going to that second table. Go to add recipient, in other words. The copying and paste feature really helps save a lot of time. The structure is actually very important. You're going to see later how important it is and how it helps you to make sure your program is robust and does not crash in any way. So this form of setting up your basic structure of your program will help you in the long run. So here we have this is now selected, and I'm going to paste it, copy and paste into the other two buttons, and just changing the database grid number. We are setting up our page control tab sheet with these button click events. When they navigate to the tab sheet, we're making sure that everything is there, is displaying properly. So your program will always look good when we click on the buttons. And at the end of your coding, you will make sure that these tabs up here are not visible. So we only navigate through the buttons, because the buttons are refreshing the display every time. Now you might wonder what's going to happen to go to reports, because we have different things on reports. We don't have an ADO table connection there. Remember the database grid, we connected to a query component. But we also want to display something there in that query component when we go to this reports tab sheet. We're going to run a few queries over here on this tab sheet. Let's go back to home. When we navigate to this tab sheet from the home screen, we must specify what we are going to do. I'm trying to find my TBS home. There it is. So I had to find it on the left-hand side here because I couldn't see it. In the button Go to Reports, we are going to run a query. And maybe this is the first query that you have done. So this is why you all have to pay attention. With DM do begin and end. I suppose I shouldn't have called it that name, but never mind. Now you'll notice that we have another data on the actual message DM data module, we have a thing called Gr11 messages. So we quote it, Gr11 messages, we type it, dot. Gr11 messages dot SQL colon, oh, not SQL, sorry, no, I'll tell lies, dot active colon equals false. Then we're going to run query code dot SQL dot text colon equals, we'll put that in a string, and then we will make the active property to true. I've copied and pasted. We'll fill in this string just now. After that query, guess what? We're going to set the grid column widths as well. Set grid column widths, open brackets, and I know that this is DB grid 7. That's why I keep the numbers, I prefer them, because I've got a lot of other names to remember as it is. You don't have to quote the DB grid name in code unless you want to change the data source property, but that's very rare that you have to do that. And yes, maybe we will do it just for fun once. But over here,